Yudrumarang everyone. I'm Bernard Higgins, proud Wiradjuri man. So I'm going to begin today's presentation with an acknowledgement of country. I'm currently on Wiradjuri country, which is my country, and I would like to pay respects to the elders past and present, and especially any First Nations people here today as well. As part of my honours, I would also like to acknowledge all the help and guidance and supervision from my supervisors, Victoria Brooks, Eleanor Gates Stewart, Andrew Hagan, Jane Quinn, and Chris Degling. And I'd also like to acknowledge the CSU Philanthropic Fund for their funding of the Honours Project. So today, to begin today's session, I will play the version of the animation that is currently where it is at. We haven't had a chance to give it to the community yet because of COVID, but I'll make sure I share sound and I will play the animation. Oh.
As human populations...
I will just mute myself as well because I think that causes issues.
increase, wilderness is cleared for farms and for towns and cities for people to live in. This can lead to people, their pets, farm animals and wild animals such as flying foxes living in the same area. Sharing the same area with wild animals doesn't guarantee that a disease could be caught off the wild animals, but it does increase the likelihood. The flying foxes can fly long distances in search of food. They can move to new habitats such as remote communities. As the flying foxes come to roost, they eat fruit from the trees. This fruit drops onto the ground under the tree. If the flying foxes are shedding Hendra virus and leave saliva on chewed fruit, the virus might be transmitted to the horses. If a horse is infected with Hendra virus, it begins to get sick. Signs include a fever, pain, and unhappiness. The virus affects their brain, and sometimes it may look like the horse is confused. It may be wobbling against the fence as if it is drunk. People can catch Hendra virus from horses.
It just seems to be a bit of a technical difficulty with this video. I'm just going to see if I can fix it. Don't know what's going on.
Okay, I think we can have a look at, perhaps one of us can have a look. Oh, it's back.
Yeah, there seems to be some sort of issue.
Yes, these things happen. What we might do is swing a little bit to the process of the items you're going to have a talk about.
Yeah, so that was co-designed with Yarrabah, which is a First Nations community in North Queensland. they had approached CSU via Vicky Brooks in regards to needing some educational resources for their community. So I'll do a quick PowerPoint presentation on the whole process behind my honours. So I will open this up now. Yeah, so yeah, like I said, it was so I worked with the environmental health workers. Yarrabar's got a very large percentage of First Nations people, very unique sort of situation. It's remote. There's one road in, it's kind of near Cairns. It's quite up to the tip of the country. So yeah, I worked with the First Nation health workers, as well as some of the rangers and some of the elders, and also with someone from the school in regards to getting it translated into their local language of Gungungee. So so I'll give a quick recap of what co-design is in case no one's really sure. I did a scoping review because there hasn't been much created in this space around animal healthcare communication, First Nations communications, especially with remote communities. I'll show I'll talk about the animation process and how the collaboration and co-design worked there, some of my previous works, and then I'll also talk about some of my future works and present work as well. So if you're not aware, co-design is basically you create a multidisciplinary team of researchers, designers, developers, and users. They could be anyone from, or in this case, it was aimed at school. So we had someone from the school. It's aimed at our First Nations community. So we had First Nations people from the community. The health workers and rangers were looking at it as a teaching resource, so they were involved. So it's about including the people who will actually be using it as equal partners in the team so that they're treated as experts in their field, even if they may not have academic backing behind that. And it's to create a tangible solution that will solve their problems. And you need that end user engagement to actually have that solution actually be viable, because they know what, they're intimately aware of what the issues are. They know what might be missing. They may know what the community's been doing previously, what's worked and what hasn't worked, what can you build on. So important features, it's focused on the people. You work out the desired outcome. So you want, in this instance, they wanted educational resources for the school age people, because in Yarrabah, the horses aren't kept in stables, they're kept around the community. So you've got young people from the age of 7, 8, maybe younger, who will just approach a horse, not really pay much attention to it, jump on it, ride it to the other side of town, leave it there, not really pay any attention to its health. And they wanted something that would work with those kids, because they've tried pamphlets and talking to them. So they thought, well, why don't we try an animation, something we can work around. So that's where we developed the practical, tangible solution, which is like the animation. The health workers and the rangers will start creating educational packages around. So basically, I did a bachelor's of animation and visual effects, and then I was accepted into the science honours. So I was included as an expert in animation. We had Vicky Brooks, who's like an epidemiologist, Chris Degling, who's social sciences. We tapped into people who have done PhDs on Hendra virus. So it's about, I did some research in regards to this, but it's much easier and much more efficient to ask an expert to give their input. So while I did learn about Hendra virus, I obviously would, over the case of an honours, I wouldn't get a PhD level education. So it's about making sure you tap into experts and And that's why we tapped into the community as well, because it's easy to just go to the council and go, can we do this for the community? Come back to Wagga, make something, give it to them, and it could be anything, but you tap into the community. So the health workers were able to say, this is what's happening in the community. Elders are able to say, look, this is what's working with the kids, and they have that respect as well. So they know that if the elders are like, well, this is really great, and I'll take it to the kids, but there's that relationship you can build on. So it was basically initiating it. And yeah, we sat down at the beginning, defined the problem, explored the current initiatives, and did all of this. And it's very important to do this at the beginning. And it's important to include the end users and whoever you might want on the team as early as possible, so that when you do define the problem, it's properly defined. It's not like, oh, this is what I as a researcher want to do a paper on. This is what the community wants to solve their problem. So it's very much end user driven. Then you have to make sure that everyone understands. So there's a common language you've got to build as well. So I work with 3D animation, and we're talking to elders in a remote community who obviously don't really have the computer skills that I do. So I've had to talk at their level and explain the 3D process, motion capture process, how to use a game engine to render out video. And that's important too, because if I'm asking elders, what can I do as an animator to help solve your problem? And if they don't know what an animator can do, they will shrug their shoulders and go, I don't know, because they just don't know. So it's very important to have that common language, so that anyone, when I ask them, well, what would you like me to create? They can go, well, I like the idea of motion capture. I've seen it used in the Marvel film. Can we do something like that? And obviously the answer was yes, because we do have motion capture facilities here at CSU. But if I don't explain to them what's possible, they wouldn't have been able to say things like that. So especially with First Nations communities wanting to be treated respectfully, it can be very, it's quite common for them to be told, we'll do an animation, and it's basic animation, which might be 2D. The characters are just staring straight, and it's childish, and they don't like to be treated like this children. So when you explain to them the process, but like, I'm using a game engine which is current, it's what's being used for kids games, like kids will embrace it because it's used for Fortnite. We're using technology that they actually, like I'm doing virtual production technology, what they're using in Marvel films, in the new Avatar films with James Cameron. That makes them go, oh, CSU was actually approaching us in a serious manner. We're being treated with respect, and they're explaining to us what we're doing and what's possible. So then, yeah, so that helps. So yeah, as this diagram set shows, very ethnographic. It's all about talking to them, getting feedback, which in some cases was showing them the animation, having them go, yeah, that was good, but I would like this included. And that's obviously not a figure, that's not a number, it's basically a conversation. It was very casual conversations. It was very much, I'd show them the animation, and then they'll talk to me for the next hour or so about what the community's done recently. So it'd be like, there was a sick horse which happened at the end of last year, which may have had hantavirus, but they never got it tested. And it's things like that which influence the animation, because towards the end of the animation, I do start showing off some of the signs to look for, which is like blood and mucus and stuff around the face and the eyes. And perfect example, if they had known that at the end of last year when there was a sick horse, they may have got it tested instead of just it being put down and buried. Yeah, so there has been co-design used in Australia. Obviously, it's quite common, but very much in human health, mental health. Not much done in the animal health sphere. So that's why I actually did a scoping review on it as part of my honours. And yeah, we found 9 papers out of, I searched 5 databases plus Google Scholar. 9 papers touched on co-design, 2 of them did it. So when you're looking at animal healthcare and co-design, it's quite rare. And then like these were both overseas. So animal healthcare communication in First Nations communities in Australia, this is basically it. There's no other one done. So it's a multidisciplinary team, which included all the health workers, the elders, community members, and we build on the it can be hard to start a co-design team without actually having previous relationships with people. It's hard to go up to them and go, hey, we're a university team, we want to co-design something with you. They'll be like, what's co-design? Who are you? Why can't we do things the normal way? Like all these questions they might ask. But Victoria Brooks and Chris Degling have been working with this community for over 5 years, I believe. So the community is quite aware that they do come in, and there is that relationship where you have to build up where you do show them that you aren't coming to the community, especially a community like Yarra, which is like quite high up on the list of communities which have high First Nations, like a percentage of living in the, it's like 96% of the community is First Nations. It's high up on the list on like low socioeconomic. So they do get targeted a fair bit from researchers who think, oh, these are prime people for me to go do a paper on. So it's great to have that relationship where you go, okay, we do come in and we do end up with papers, but we also do give you something back, that reciprocity, which is very important in First Nations culture as well. It's great to have that relationship because then it made this co-design thing much simpler. So it's very important to build those relationships. As I said, it has been rarely used in animal health at all. Animal health communication is basically nil. Human health communication, it's much more widely used, very much embraced by the National Health Service in the UK. Everything in their health system is basically co-designed now. Lots of research about how creating outcomes with patients that work help change behaviour, which if you just give them something what they aren't going to use is not going to change behaviour at all. So like the animation was obviously the tangible outcome, which focused on Hendra virus. It actually includes best practices because they wanted things to be aimed at kids, but also aimed at a wider community, but to also alleviate some of the fear. So if a vet gets caught in because of Hendra virus and they're wearing a big hazmat suit with personal protection, it can be kind of intimidating, especially if your only experience of seeing that is like in a movie. So I like, can you include all of this, show the whole process. That's we talk about, if you see a sick horse, contact the health workers or rangers or an adult, stay away from it. Then we carry on through the process of what the health workers will do, and if they think a vet needs to be called, what the vet will do, just to show the community that it's not like obviously if your horse gets Hendra it's a bad situation because it's fatal. Every horse that has had the Hendra virus has either passed away from it or had to be euthanized. But it's also quite risky for people. It passes from if it passes from horses to people. There's been like 8 cases in Australia and 5 of them have been fatal. And the treatment is basically you go into hospital. They might do blood transfusions, but it's basically cross your fingers and hope your immune system beats it. So very much they wanted a focus on, if you see it, it's vital that you pay attention, use your personal protection equipment. So yeah, basically the co-design process was we went up there and I said, this is what they wanted. Went away, did a script, a storyboard, and animatic, and stopped. And then that was the next stage for the co-design. So we took that to the community. And I showed it to some children around Wagga as well, like friends and things. And it's basically, we showed it to them and go, is this what you were asking for? Is this the kind of information you want included? And for some people who I showed it to, the question was, previous to showing them the animation, I was like, what do you know about Hendra virus? Afterwards, I asked them, did you learn anything? So it's very much quick iterations of making sure the right information is included. And I also collaborated with acting students at CSU. So like I said, I use motion capture and voiceover. So this is James in a motion capture suit. I also worked with Zakel Zaya. She did most of the motion capture as well. And she also did the voiceover. That was also part of the co-design process is who do we use for a voiceover? First Nations communities tend to be matriarchal. Science communication tended to be male voices. But the community seemed happy with a female voice, thought it might have a better uptake. And yeah, using a game engine, Unreal Engine is created by Epic Games. It's freely available for anyone. Epic Games has made a fortune off Fortnite. It's capable of rendering a high quality 3D graphic. So this still shot here would have been rendered in 4 or 5 seconds. It's quite quick. That quicker workflow allows for quick iterations. I could render out 20-second scene in a minute, where previously it could have been 8 hours. There is some limitations on lighting and quality and stuff because it is based around a game. So I can't quite get the Hollywood quality graphics because they do require the longer render times, but it still looks quite nice. So that quicker workflow, the virtual production. So I was able to put the motion capture data in, render stuff out, test it, test camera angles, create versions for the community and other people for feedback. If I didn't have Unreal Engine available, there was no way I would have done a 4-minute animation in a year, not with everything else included with honors. It does speed up the process a lot. And yeah, talking to Yarrabah, very much wanted it focused in the community so that the kids could recognize it. So on our trips up there, I took a ton of reference photos, a ton of video, recorded sounds. So yeah, I basically recreated Yarrabah in a 3D space. This is the lookout, which is on the way into Yarrabah, and it's quite common. Everyone knows Yarrabah. When you look down, it looks like this. So that was recreated, and it's part of a scene where the flying foxes are flying into Yarrabah. So it really ties the story of flying foxes being affected by human population growth, coming into a First Nation, coming into a remote community. People from the area look at that and go, "That's Yarrabah." Like I've shown it to people, and they go, "Yep, that's Yarrabah," as soon as they see it. So, and that also does help with teaching as well, because when you're showing it to people in the community and go, this is an issue, it's a little bit easier for them to take it seriously if you go, we've taken your unique situation, your home into account. Like, we're not saying to you, this is a big issue everywhere. We're saying this is a big issue here. So it's about trying to, how do we demonstrate to the people that what we're trying to teach them is skills that's taken their unique situation into account. I used height map data. So the recreation of Yarra is basically Yarra. People could walk around and visit sites. Like, there is that possibility. But it also speeds it up because it's, instead of me sculpting mountains and stuff, like, I just use height map data. People look at it and go, I recognize that island. I recognize these mountains, and it really ties it in. And it's about, so basically my whole honors was, how do I merge animation with science research? It's about adding value to research projects, making them engaging. You're not really going to engage young people with a published paper or a talk, especially 10-year-olds. You give them a brochure. Like, I know when I was at school, you gave me a brochure, it went in my bag and it went in the bin. And yeah, part of it as well is the framework. So it was about, how do I, because while I'm Wiradjuri, I'm obviously not Gungandji. How do I build a framework where I can approach a community and work with them respectfully? So when I went up there, I introduced myself and I let them know that I'm First Nations, I'm Wiradjuri, and that opened a bit of dialogue as well, because I was able to show them some of his previous work, like Weera and the Giant Kangaroos, which was recorded in Wiradjuri language by Lloyd. So that actually did help bridge it as well, because I was like, oh, we would like that included in ours. So I had conversations with Nathan in regards to translating my script into Gungandji. So it's about that framework of culturally being sensitive, working together, reciprocity, and that framework I've built over the last few years and through my honours has come in use post honours. So I do actually have some previous works, which is Weera and the Giant Kangaroo. I've worked with some of CSU's other schools on Evoking Memories, which was a proof of concept on how to make VR more welcoming for people with dementia. And Visual Dreaming is an app which is based in Wagga, connecting First Nations people with each other and their culture as like a goal setting app, but also in regards to a community driven sort of mental health sort of solution, instead of maybe if we work as a community together and connect with culture, it might help with mental health and feelings of connectiveness. So I will try the video again, because I did have a couple of other videos I would like to show.
Bernard, Jana's got it up to, if you're having trouble, he can.
Okay. All right, we'll let him have a go.
No worries, brother. It's really, really awesome to hear the way that you've pulled it all together, and yeah, really proud to be on the same team as your brother. So thanks. I'll just share my screen. I've got your YouTube link that you sent a little while back ready to go, if you'd like me to just play that.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Yeah. Okay, no worries. So I'll just get that cracking now for you.
As human populations increase, wilderness is cleared for farms and for towns and cities for people to live in. This can lead to people, their pets, farm animals and wild animals, such as flying foxes, living in the same area. Sharing the same area with wild animals doesn't guarantee that a disease could be caught off the wild animals, but it does increase the likelihood. The flying foxes can fly long distances in search of food. They can move to new habitats, such as remote communities. Flying foxes come to roost. They eat fruit from the trees. This fruit drops onto the ground under the tree. If the flying foxes are shedding hendrovirus and leave saliva on chewed fruit, the virus might be transmitted to the horses. If a horse is infected with hendrovirus, it begins to get sick. Signs include a fever, pain, and unhappiness. The virus affects their brain, and sometimes it may look like the horse is confused. It may be wobbling against the fence as if it is drunk. People can catch hendrovirus from horses. While the disease is rare and hasn't happened here yet, it could happen. So if a horse looks sick, check it from a distance. See if there are any injuries that could explain it. If not, don't touch the horse and make sure everybody, even friends and family, can't go near the horse. Contact someone from council, biosecurity, an EHW, a ranger or a vet and tell them that your horse isn't well. They will ask you to describe what you can see. Your council, biosecurity, an EHW or a ranger can say if a vet needs to be called and can tell you about staying safe around the horse. It's important not to go near or touch the horse's face. When the vet arrives, don't be alarmed at the personal protective equipment or PPE that they have to wear. This is to protect them from catching the disease. To test for hendrovirus, the vet will have to take a blood sample using a syringe and swabs. While waiting for the results, which can take a few days, the vet will make sure everybody is safe and will help watch the horse to see if it gets better or worse. It's really important that everybody stays safe by not going near the horse. The vet and your EHW will give instructions about how to stay safe and how to care for the horse. It's also important that other pets, including horses and dogs, do not go near the horse. If the test for hendrovirus comes back positive, there are a few things that the community and the owners of the horse have to do. The vets and community will need to look for signs of hendrovirus in other horses who may have come into contact with the infected horse. Doctors and nurses will ask questions and look for signs of virus in people who have come into contact with the infected horse. Sadly, all horses that have hendrovirus die. It is important not to touch the horse, even if it has died. The virus can be transmitted if you touch the horse's snot, spit, fluid around the eyes, and blood. If there is a possibility that a horse is infected, it is important to keep it quarantined from other horses and people until you are certain that it is not infected. For more information on preventative measures you can take against hendrovirus, please visit the Queensland Government Health website.
Yes, so since completing my honours, I've been doing some work with the elders around, the Wiradjuri elders around Wagga and Leeton, basically doing the same sort of stuff, not so much animal healthcare, but language resources. So they're basically, so I've done cultural videos on scar trees and creating coolamans, the importance of Wiradjuri language to our culture, the importance of significant sites, such as Fife Bower wetlands, the importance of truth-telling in regards to the history of the language and the history of places such as Warringasta Mission. Like the Warringasta Mission project is quite big. It's basically going to be an interactive game level where you can walk around what Warringasta Mission looked like in the past with created using reference videos and photos from the mission. It's going to include sound cues from families around the area who had ties to Warringasta Mission. Both sides of my family had people on Warringasta Mission. And it's about like co-designing with the community and the Leeton Land Council, a resource that's community driven and can teach history. And it's about, because I've found that if you want to create anything with First Nations communities, co-design is absolutely the only way you can go. They need to be included from the very, very start. It's all about self-determination and their right to go, no, I don't want to do that. So if you start working without their consultation, it's not culturally appropriate. I can't see any way that you can do anything with a First Nations community without it being co-designed. And it's basically, it all ties into these projects all have learning and teaching elements to them. It's like I've learned through my work with Lloyd, through to land councils and elders, the language trust through CSU, but I'm learning just as much about cultural sensitivity, how to approach elders, and how to guide them in their, like, because they do want to teach some culture to people, and it's like, how do you guide them to teach it in ways which are culturally respectful, and you still have to address issues where it's like it's going to be recorded, where sometimes they might have just wanted it not to be recorded. And yeah, there's that learning aspect from me, but there's also the learning aspect from whoever watches what we create. They learn things from me about technology and things. So there's all those learning elements to it. And there's also the teaching part where it's like teaching culture, because part of it was when I went to the school in Yarrabah I met with the teacher, and their students wanted to be taught about career opportunities that they weren't aware of. And I'm like, well, supposedly there's only a handful of First Nations people in the entire country who have the skills that I have in animation and visual effects. And the kids were like, well, this is so cool. But so there's so many different learning and teaching elements to a co-design process. There's that transfer of knowledge, which goes backwards and forth in regards to nearly every part of it, if it's done well. Yeah, so I did see a question pop up. It depends on who you want to work with. There's a question from Kerry asking about the co-design process. Who do you approach to begin with? It depends on what you want to work on. If I was to start one in Wagga without knowing anyone, I would probably approach an elder who might be able to guide you towards who to talk to. There's always land councils, which are good organisations to approach.
And can I just add while you're thinking there, also our staff within the university. You know, we have great networks of staff within our uni that we often overlook. We look outside, and so many of our First Nation staff are involved with local communities, with local organisations, with our elders. And sometimes that's the conversation. And I think with a lot of your designs and your work, part of that process for me, and I know working on some of the stuff with you, for your assessment, you came with the idea of, I've got to do something for my assessment, but you didn't say, this is what I'm doing and this is how I'm going to do it. It was having those initial conversations of, you had an idea that you wanted to do an animation, and then we had the conversation about what it was going to be about and how it would then progress through from there. And I think that's part of what you're talking about here with this presentation and your other ones, is that process that you actually go through, that it's not set in stone and, you know, it's flexible. It actually moves with the demands of the community and what's actually going on at the time. And that's one of the challenges we often face, is how do we actually, you know, particularly around research and projects, because we'll often have a set focus. And sometimes what we're talking about is saying, yeah, but that's not necessarily the community's focus. That might be our focus as an organisation or a research project, but the needs of the community, or where that particular community we're working with is at, is somewhere totally different. So that may not be the best community for that project we're thinking about. There might be a community 20 kilometres down the road that might be ready for that project. And I guess I've seen that a lot with agencies, organisations and research coming out to communities, and communities are really shut down and haven't got involved because it's not relevant to us. We don't see, that's not where we're at. We're actually dealing with our youth suicide rates at the moment. So, you know, issues around heterovirus isn't our focus. We're actually focusing on something else. Send us somebody that can help us with these issues. And sometimes that's what it is. It's, you know, being able to connect the community to other people that are relevant to their needs at the moment.
Yeah, because that exactly did actually happen with my honours project, because obviously COVID affected travel, but I couldn't also, they had heaps of stuff I had to deal with COVID. So I ended up having to get an extension on my honours so that it could go into this year, because they weren't interested in looking at Google Drive links or YouTube links about Hendra when they were like, we're worried about COVID. Like, even though they approached CSU with it, it became less of a priority. So that's why I ended up doing the scoping review and spent a lot of time on research, which ended up paying off in the long run anyway. But yeah, it's very much community driven, and they have to be able to influence research. Like, if I was a researcher who wasn't doing honours, doing it with the community, it could have very easily just changed to a COVID resource, if that was what they wanted. But yeah, it's about being mindful about, if you go to a community and you start working with them and they go, and their priorities change, or you might get feedback from them saying, yeah, this isn't quite what we want. You have to be flexible enough to change.
And Bernard, could you tell us a little bit about how this work and this preparation, you know, prepared you for the work that you've done in Goulet recently too?
Yeah, Goulet helps with the Indigenous Cultural Competency Program and cultural immersions. And it's much the same. Like, I'm working with elders. They're doing great work in the community, and we just recently won a global presentation award for our academic excellence. And I helped create the presentation using my skills I learned here, but it's also, when you start moving into the online space, it's about how do you capture country in a digital space so people who are online can get some of the experience. And I think that's what we captured in our presentation. And it's kind of what I've been working with. And it's about, and things like 360 video, videos, and animations, and working with the community and having them influence what's presented can make that richer and have more depth to it, because it suddenly becomes, it's not just a video of, it's not just, I just haven't gone out into the bush and taken a video of some trees. I've gone out to the bush with Uncle William Ingram, his kid. They're cutting a scar tree, we're cutting a coolamon, we're talking about the process. My first personal experience of actually being present when a coolamon was created, and it becomes much more richer. And those cultural immersions, and it's about capturing that in the digital space and the online space. And Goulet seems to be doing great work in that space. And yeah, it's even though it may not be approached as a co-design thing, it very much is. Like, it may not be tagged as co-design, but it's very much, you go to the elders and go, we want to do an online experience, very open-ended. They go, well, let's go do X. And you work together from the very beginning and create like a beautiful in-depth experience that people can watch online. And yeah, I think that's where I was able to help with Goulet. I don't know. Anyone else got any other questions?
I'd just like to say it's been marvellous working with you, Bernard, and you just contributed so much to our university, and I just want to thank you on behalf of the Goulet team too, but I'm sure Jana will jump in as well, and I know Lloyd, you know, you're closely connected with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right on. Like, it's a real pleasure working with you, brother. Like, and you make it easy. And you're very, you know, the skills that you bring are kind of, I reflect on my own practice as well. So it's really good. It's like that old saying of iron sharpens iron. Well, I feel like we've sharpened each other in the time that we've walked together. So yeah, well done on your presentation as well. It's really good, man. Thank you. I do have a rolling edit of the Coolerman video. I will try to play it. It goes for about 7 minutes, and it will tie up my time, I guess. But I thought it might be something that people might be interested in seeing, just out of curiosity.
That would be wonderful. Please do.
I will just share my screen. That would help.
Just while you're doing that, from the DLT conference point of view, thank you so much for today. It's fabulous, and this will be a wonderful way to finish.
Thanks. So yeah, it's a rolling edit, so some of the sound is still not being fixed and stuff, but it gives a rough idea of what we've been working on in Leighton. Hopefully it works.
My name's William Ingram, and I come out to the river with my son, and we're going to cut a coolerman. A coolerman is a holding vessel. You can either use it as a baby's cradle, or to carry food, or even water. We can cut a coolerman from just about any tree, but we're cutting this one with a river red gum today.
Elijah Nadi Yuan, Badu Girama Delinya Rajri Gidir. Coolamans are cut from madan trees in Yurubam, summer. Today we are using bargain steel axes, but in the past they used guinal, stone axes. There are many uses for a coolaman. It can carry such things as guda, a baby or child, wailang, fruits, galing, water, dingalang, berries, or murang, mud.
What Elijah has done now has marked out his coolaman. So that will be the piece he's keeping. That will be the coolaman in there. His next process will be to go around that same pattern he's cut into the tree. And all that bark in there will be removed. And what that would allow him to do is then slowly prise the coolaman away from the tree. He's cut as far as the heartwood, which will make it easier for the coolaman to be pulled off.
Here I cut a second ring around the coolaman. This will allow me to get my hands underneath and pry the coolaman off the tree.
Elijah's taking and placed a ring around the coolaman, which will make it easier for him to prise the coolaman off the tree. And if you look closely, you'll see the heartwood there. That's as far as you want to go.
Here I am cutting the wallagai, strips of bark from the madan. This is to make it possible to pry the mandai, the bark of the madan, off for the coolaman.
Coolaman's a bit tight on the tree, so what Elijah has done is going around and slowly work the axe around and prising the coolaman from the tree. It's a slow process, but it is a necessary process so that the coolaman doesn't crack. That's where it hung on.
Here I am stripping the wallagai back from the heartwood. This is to protect the madan from nirjana, disease, and gabang, insects.
Yep.
What Elijah is doing now is he's caking the scar in mud or clay, and what that does will blend the tree back into the environment, protect it from insects and disease.
Here I am putting the murang onto the madan. This helps further protect the madang from nirjana and gabang, and further blends into the Dallawalla, the forest. Cutting a coolamon from the madan also makes it into what is known as a scar tree. This continues the cultural practice of artifact making and scarring trees through to the Dalang, the present, and demonstrates that our cultural practices are not just belonging to the Maradal, the past.
All right. So thank you everyone for attending. And yeah, thank you to the Regole team for co-presenting. And once again, thanks to my honours supervisors and the CSU Philanthropic Fund for the support for my honours project.
Thank you, Bernard. That was fantastic.
Thanks.
That's great. So interesting.
Well done, Bernard. Mandangul.
Mandangul.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate that, and thanks, Bernard. It was so beautiful. If you haven't filled in the feedback form, if you could just take a few moments to do that, that would be great. But otherwise, thank you for your attendance today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
See you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone. Thank you.
Ko nei rā.
Bye.